What's up, YouTube? It's Leo
Mind
again,
your
Boonta
step.
1987. Today I'm playing Hogwarts Legacy on my PC. It's a RX 6800
Where do you
with a
suppose your wife got the
5950X
portkey that
and
brought us here?
DDR4
A good question.
3600 CLA
Miriam
tune.
spent years searching for
So you can see the
evidence of a
performance
long-forgotten form of
metrics
ancient
up, but that's not
magic.
what this is about. But this is more
Ancient
complaints
magic?
about stuff like
Yes,
the ambient
a
occlusion
powerful
implementation in
magic
this game.
wielded
So
by
like
a
if you look
rare
at the rocks
few.
above my character,
Seems to have been
um,
lost to time.
as neighboring rocks sort of disappear from the screen, the shading in between them also seems to go, and this is because they're using like frustum occlusion or occluding, and that means that like it's using the camera view or the screen space to do that, which screen space ambient occlusion, like that's what you would suspect, right? Of course, that's
Hogwarts
what
Castle
screen
was
space
built
means,
by
but there are different ways
and
to
is
do this,
itself
and
a
that like
stronghold of that
you
ancient
can
magic.
avoid
I
occluding
don't know
things, which is
where
like
she
hiding
came
them
into
from
possession
view.
of the portkey,
Avoid occluding them
but I am
entirely
certain
if
it
you
was
use
to
a
do with that
distance
search.
as opposed to a
Ah,
frustum.
there's the path down below.
So
This way.
and these are for the most part static meshes.
But sir,
And you
why was
can
your wife
also
searching for
choose to
evidence
render
of
a little
lost
bit
magic?
beyond the view of the
Miriam wanted to
screen
understand
so
why
that the
such
shadowing
powerful
is not
magic
so
disappeared
abrupt.
from the wizarding world.
Like you can see
Spoke
it's
of
only
the good
cutting
it could
off a
do.
very small
But
amount
magic is
as
no
I drag
different than any
the
power.
view down, right? You can
What
see
really
like
matters
at the
is
top
the
end, and this is
one
true
who wields it.
reflections as well, that you can like sort of overdraw it so that you're looking at more of a zoomed in view, and so you don't have this ambient occlusion problem. You could also use distancing if you're using like the character, for example, so that my character isn't messing with any of the ambient occlusion of different objects. And you'll see that more a bit when I switch to my other character, because I just created this one to show one particular thing, which is the shadows. Another thing is LODs. Actually, I should go back up here for a second to show that. And so LODs is like when the amount of detail that any mesh might have, depending on how close you are to it. Not really how close you are to it, but how much of the screen space it takes up. So you can see the textures on that wall, and as I get closer in this direction, they actually change and become more detailed. And this is what's called level of details, meaning there will be like a really high quality mesh or object with a lot of geometry, a lot of triangles, and of course, if you have that for all of the things that are really far away, it's really expensive, costs a lot of performance. But what Nanite and Unreal Engine 5 does is it actually scales it dynamically by percentage, so that it is not more detailed than what you can see, but is reducing as it gets smaller on screen so that you're not spending more performance on it. Unreal Engine 4 does not do this. It does thankfully have auto LODs, which you can tune, but yeah, Nanite is substantially better than LODs. And then, like I said, the ambient occlusion in this game could be avoided using various methods, not only the method I mentioned, but various different ways.
Ah, up there.
And then here in a minute, I'm going to show the reflection issue. But another thing about this is that like there's no actually, before I talk about that, I'll talk about world partition, which is like in Unreal Engine 4 when you load in when you drop in a landscape to start building on it or whatever, it actually builds it up as like places it in as tiles, and as you get closer to tiles or move away from tiles, it loads them in or out. And you can set some things to be like permanent, so that even if you get far, it's still there, like all that stuff way off in the distance. And then you can also draw or design levels, like a room can be its own level, so that as you enter the room, it loads the room. But of course, the problem with that is you have big performance hitches, because instead of it loading it gradually as you get near the room, it's loading it as you're opening the door, or like right when you walk up to the door, which is why when you move from area to area in this game, you experience quite a lot of performance loss. Or if I just kind of stand around here and like continuously turn the camera, the performance is pretty consistent, where like if I were to run back to the bridge and run back here, it would cause a stutter. And so Unreal Engine 5 does a really good job of sort of blending the two and avoiding having things randomly pop in. Like you walk into a room and like all of the stuff in the room, like the characters, the walls, the door on the back side of the wall, or on the far back wall, and like the table and all kinds of stuff, all that stuff in this game just kind of pops in sometimes. Like you walk through the door, that stuff isn't there, and then like it's popping in, it's just suddenly appearing. Where in Unreal Engine 5 you wouldn't have that issue, and in even Unreal Engine 4 you could avoid that issue by having that stuff not be occluded in the way that it's being done, and so you could have it instanced by distance. And sure, you could allow occlusion so that like if something is blocking the view of it, you don't render it, or you don't render all of it. But you can also have it set so that it, like within a certain distance it's still rendered or instanced. And here, like, look at this, how good this reflection looks. Okay, ray tracing is not on, and I understand like the room is also there, which is not out here, so it's not exactly a reflection, but this is like dual instancing of our character meshes, so you could have that in the mirrors as well, and I'll show the mirror in a minute and how bad it looks. But yeah, you could, if reflections can look this good in this game in Unreal Engine 4, why do the reflections in the mirror and stuff look so terrible? Because they look absolutely abhorrent. But like, look at this. It looks fantastic. And how big of a performance hit is it really? Like, let's turn the camera so that so that you are not seeing our characters in the reflection, and like it's in the 80s. Over here it's also in the 80s. So like what's the deal? Why isn't this being done for the mirrors in the game? So I'll actually, when it allows me to pause,
Where are we?
I'll switch to my other character and then show the other reflections which are in the mirrors in Hogsmeade, which of course has a lot of performance issues, and it's for the same reason that I mentioned, that it's like loading stuff in and out too abruptly, or like too much stuff at a time. And not to just like totally, I don't know, trash this game. I think the game is great. I think it's stylized really well. I think the character design's cool. I think the animations are great, and I think like the story, of course, like I like Harry Potter, so I like it, and that's why I'm bothering to play it. But like, there's so much about the performance in this game that is absolutely lacking. And like, look at this reflection. This is obviously screen space because you can see only part of my character is being rendered because his lower half is cut off, sort of. And the more of it that comes into view, the more of it that shows up in the mirror. But the room could be perfectly reflected pretty much by using a reflection capture. And then my character could be dual instance like it was in that previous scene, so that my character would also look really good and it wouldn't even be that expensive. You can also use a planar reflection, which would do a better job. But like, this is just ridiculous. Look at this thing. And I think this is especially bad like for the console players, because like for those of us in the PC space, like, or PC gaming space, we're, I don't know, it's an expensive hobby, especially now with graphics card prices being ridiculously high. But you can spec out your PC if you save the money or whatever. You can, compromise on some other expenses and build your PC to be more powerful. And especially when you consider like RTX 40 and RDNA 3, like they're all pretty powerful. At least the high end stuff is pretty powerful today. And like this RX 6800 compared to today's top of the line cards is pretty, I don't know, mediocre. And last generation it was pretty good. It's when you consider the consoles and the fact that you can't do that, and it's like it's already a pretty big investment to buy a $500 PS5 or Xbox Series X, and even a Switch. It's still not cheap to buy a Switch, and then to pay full price for this game on any of those $60 or $70 if you buy the DLC version is pretty ridiculous when you consider like the performance on any of those things is not going to be anywhere near as good. Nowhere near as good, because either of the two higher end consoles is something similar to like a GTX 1070 Ti, or maybe just below a 1080, or in like the best cases in the better optimized stuff, closer to a 1080 Ti, which is below a 2070 Super, which is like a 3060. So below a 3060, below a 6600 XT. And this is a 6800, which is several levels above that. And of course, a 3080 is better than this. A 3090 is better than this. And of course, the new cards, the 4080 and 4090, and the new RDNA 3 cards are substantially better as well. And they also can't really run it and make it look awesome while also having it run really well, which I think is ridiculous. So on a console, especially like on a Switch, this game is going to look terrible. And I could, of course, buy it on my Switch to see it and maybe get do a review of it or something, but it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. And I think had they done a little bit more work to make this game look better, migrate it to UE5, have a small team to do the migration, to work on, like, because you can just open a UE4 project in UE5. Some stuff will be broken, you go in and fix them. Like I said, it looks like they didn't use displacement, which is one of the bigger headaches of the transition. And like moving in the tiled height map or whatever was the original height map works just fine. Moving in meshes work just fine. And if they're static meshes, you can convert them to nanite just right away. And then when you consider that, like, Lumen, the software implementation, although it doesn't look as good as standard ray tracing, means that people without ray tracing hardware could also run that. They could run ray tracing on their without a ray tracing video card on their CPU. And the hardware implementation of Lumen looks, I think, significantly, not like a ton, but enough that I would say it's significant. It's a significant improvement over ray tracing, especially the ray tracing implementation in this game. And it's not as expensive. So we could have had better ray tracing with better performance, and then like all of these other issues, although a lot of them could have been fixed with more work in UE4, would have not even been an issue in UE5. And then with the addition of nanite, could have meant better performance and better visuals all across the board. So yeah, I'm just kind of annoyed with, I don't know, the lack of, I don't know if it's expertise or experience, or it's definitely not funding, it's definitely not time. The lack of interest maybe for the devs to, like, I'm sure it was a lot to work on all of this stuff, but I think too many devs get so bogged down in like creating custom assets for freaking everything that they don't have to, like, they won't have the time afterward to optimize it. Like if they spend 200 hours on creating this window, that's 200 hours that they're not spending on optimization potentially. So I think if they would have had a small team to move it over to UE5 and fix the few things that are broken during the migration, which, by the way, it gives you error codes for most of it when you do that migration. And all the stuff that just works. And you can enable nanite on all the meshes and all the foliage. But yeah, I don't understand why they didn't use UE5. I don't understand why they didn't fix all this other stuff that they could have fixed within UE4. And with it being like as highly anticipated and like, I guess not just highly anticipated, but like a highly interested game as far as like how big of a fan base this franchise has. Otherwise, the gameplay's cool. I think the world design and stuff is excellent and stuff. I don't hate the game. I really like the game. I just think it sucks that they didn't do more with it to improve the way it looks and improve the performance, especially when you consider the hardware capabilities of consoles. Anyway, that's enough rambling for me. See you guys. Wait, before let me know if you guys have thought about this sort of stuff yourself, like while you're playing the game. Go ahead and let me know. And if not, and you're just sort of now hearing this from me or whatever, either way, I'd like to hear what you guys think, what you guys have to say about it, and I'd like for you guys to leave that stuff down in the comments, and hopefully we can have some good discussions about it, and to let developers know that people are annoyed by cookie cutter work and incomplete games. Not that this is like a super incomplete game, it's not Cyberpunk or whatever, but a lot of games are coming out unfinished. and then we have to wait like a year or a year and a half for them to finally be what they were supposed to be. And I think that's really annoying. Like Halo Infinite is down the drain now because they didn't have co-op campaign, which everybody was waiting for. And they have it now, but nobody cares. Anyway, I own Cyberpunk, and it was absolutely broken, and it just wasn't what I expected it to be, and it performed terribly, and I was like, I'm not interested. And I'm sure they fixed a lot of that stuff by now, but I'm not interested in playing that game anymore. So it's just really annoying, and it's an annoying trend that I think needs to go away. Anyway, let me know what you guys think, and I'll talk to you guys later.